So this is everything that you need to wrap an exhaust manifold correctly so it's going to last years, not just weeks. First up, most important, is high quality wrap. DEI make exhaust wrap that lasts for ages and ages. I've put it on customers' cars for years, no problems. The old style wrap, which I actually prefer, is much dustier, lighter coloured, ends up golding up quite nice once you get heat through it. But this wrap needs to be soaked for at least half an hour in a bucket of water before you try and work with it. It stretches nicely once it's wet, it's less dusty. So obviously you don't get fiberglass everywhere in your lungs and on your hands. Marigolds, definitely way up there. The normal rubber gloves will probably split halfway through. These are obviously much more durable. Just some emery cloth to clean off the exhaust manifold itself, and then the last thing is the clips. Obviously these small high temperature pull through clamp, they've got like a little ball inside to stop it going backwards. And then for the larger collectors and things, you can use different styles. These short ones are much better, and then you just cut to suit. So that is everything that you actually need to wrap the manifold correctly. For this 4-branch Honda manifold, we're going to be using the titanium newer style wrap, which doesn't need to be soaked. So we're going to get the manifold and we're just going to clean off as much as we can. We may even use a wire brush in a few places. So that's all the cleaning on the manifold that needs to be done. Don't need to go crazy, just try and remove any surface corrosion. Obviously this is stainless steel, but it's a fairly cheap stainless steel. All the way down to where you're going to finish up. You want to think about where you're going to finish. Obviously you're going to start at the beginning of each runner, but where you want to finish is quite important. So ideally on this one, we want to finish just in front of this bung for the wideband or oxygen sensor. If we go past it, we'll have to wrap round it, but then this is going to start potentially causing damage to the wrap or at least the tyre. So we can eliminate that completely and have no issues running the wrap and the tyre here and finishing up. You just got to think about where you want to finish and make sure that it's not going to get damaged, because as soon as you get a tear or a rub on the wrap, that's where the problems start and you start having bits fall off. The other part of planning you need to consider is how far down the run each individual runner you can get. Obviously, these get so tight that it's unlikely they're going to wrap. We may not even be able to wrap the pairs. So in this case, we're going to wrap each individual runner probably down to this section here. And at this point here, we'll then go into wrapping the pair together until we get down here, which then it will be wrapped in a single. If you go over to DEI's website, there's a handy calculator on there to help you work out the lengths that you might need when you're wrapping. To work it out on their calculator, all you need is to measure the diameter of the tube and the length of the tube, put in the width of the wrap and your overlap, and it will give you a rough idea of how many feet of wrap you need for that part of your job. So in our case, 1 3/4 inches pipe diameter, 2 feet on length. We're using 2-inch wrap and we want to overlap by 1 inch. So that gives us 12 feet overall length to wrap this single bit of pipe. It'll be slightly less than that, probably about 11, 10 feet, but we want to make sure that we've definitely got all the amount we need. I've just cut my 12 feet of wrap, and I'm actually going to do the inside tube first because the outside looks a lot easier. So and now we're ready to actually start the first wrap. The first point, you want to double up and go right round twice. So make sure it's up against the flange, and you want to pull it nice and tight. Make sure you haven't got any bits sticking out. You can place a few fingers on top and then try and pull it as tight as you can. So the first section is simply that. You've wrapped it round twice, and then the second time you come round, you've started you're then going to start your 1 inch overlap. So from this point, it's rinse and repeat, overlap, half of the wrap every time. So I've come as far as I possibly can. I can't get another wrap inside that section there because there's not enough space. We're not going to clamp this. We're literally just going to pull this round, pull it through. I'm going to pull it through and then just pull it down so it's nice and tight, because the other wrap is going to hold this wrap on. So that's it wrapped, and I've just pulled it through. At the minute it's just sitting there. Looks like rubbish, doesn't really matter, because when we wrap this other tube, we're going to come right down and we're going to continue, and then we're going to wrap all the way down to the very end, and that will hold this section in place entirely, because the double wrap's going to start up here. So all this lower section, basically from here, is going to be tight into this wrap on this side, and we'll bring it all the way down. So to work out, so that 12 foot that we cut was basically perfect. So we know that down to here is 12 feet of wrap. But from here, we're going to be double wrapping. So then you can just add them two together. Don't worry about the over. Obviously, I know it's not a round pipe. And then we'll just do that section, work out that section, add that to this 12 foot, and work out this section, add that to the whatever's left from both these two sections. So I've just worked out the rest of the wrap. This piece, this double section here, is going to be 10 feet. And this section is going to be 6 feet. So we've got 12 for the initial, which worked out pretty perfect. And then another 10, and then another 6. So that makes 28 feet for this entire piece that's going to run all the way from here, double wrap, and then down. So that is 28 feet of wrap, which is a lot of wrap. But I don't want to have to come down here with 12 foot and then re-wrap the whole thing. I want to be able to continue all the way through to make the job as nice as possible. This is going to get messy and it's time consuming to do, so you should definitely plan it. So we finally got down to the join where we're going to overlap the pair. So I've come round and I'm actually just going to pull this really tight down into that bar in between the two. So I've pulled that tightly into that join, can't put any more pressure on it, and you can see it's come round and it's actually pulling this other wrap down. So that's how you can make sure that you're not going to get any wraps loosening themselves. And then we can just wrap that round. It doesn't really matter what that bit looks like because it's about to be covered entirely once we go around this whole lot. So now we're going to go around the pair together. See if we go right round. Okay, in this case we're going to do another one. I might actually pull it through the center this time. I think it's going to look a little bit better. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just continue. We can always unwrap it. We'll just pull it through. If you don't like the way it looks, just unwrap it and wrap it in a different manner. Let's have a look on the other side. So we can see that wrap coming through there. So we'll re-wrap over that one, and then we've got the rest, which we will cut and tidy up now. So that's cut off, and we will wrap straight over that one again, and that should tie everything in nicely. Yeah. So that's the finished look there. It looks very similar from the other side. So when you're reducing or doing reductions in wrap, you normally have to tighten up the distance between them so that it doesn't start just sliding down on itself, which is exactly what I've done there. As you can see, we've got roughly an inch on every one, and then we're down to about 10 mil, just so we can get it nice and tight and it doesn't start to slip. I'm not sure there's going to be enough wrap here for the entire thing, but we will keep our fingers crossed. Coming down to the final bit, I managed to have enough wrap. But another consideration is obviously that as you're pulling this, the 2-inch wrap probably turns into slightly under 2 inches because of how much you've pulled it tight. So then this is going to be the last piece for this, and we can just finish it off. We just put a zip tie around that. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. It's not going to be seen because it's going to be wrapped over. That's the third tube tied up. Alright, well, I was going to cut this down to the correct footage, but actually I'm just going to run it all the way through. It's a 50-meter roll, and although it's going to take slightly longer because I've got to pull it through every one, I'm not really that fussed. Also cut the feet between friends. So we've come all the way down now, and the issue you've got to deal with is that if you just wrap round without re-wrapping the centre, so you have to wrap and pull, if you just wrap round without doing that, you'll have a gap in the centre, so you want to be able to fill that gap. So we do that by literally wrapping downwards, pulling it through, and then wrapping round. So hopefully, and you can do this a few times before it starts to build up too much, like up further up here, but we want to basically wrap so we get this V completely covered. Finish them off, you're just going to pull them. There is a tool to roll them through, but you can just pull them with some pliers, fold them back on themselves. A chisel or a large flathead screwdriver to hold the end, and just pull. We'll just do exactly the same thing on the runners. Just cut each zip tie off. Take your clips. And just do exactly the same thing. I generally find it nicer to put the pull piece underneath. Just looks a bit prettier. So this is a complete overview. As you can see, we've got a little bit of that can be cut off. And that's the multiple wraps running through the center. Trying to keep the wrap almost identical so you can see each one's lining up. Just trying to keep it even so you know you've got the same amount of wrap. We obviously come up to the joins. And the same, these are impossible. There's nothing you can do about this unless you wrap. So you've got about 5 mil. So you'll always end up with a little dip on the inside because you've pulled it tight. But we're wrapping, obviously, it's a 2-inch or slightly under 2-inch by the time you've stretched it. And you're just trying to wrap, so it's just under 1 inch on each one. You go around, again, these have been pulled through the centers to try and build up the material, so when you over wrap, there's no issue. So from the top, you can also see in the gaps there, it's fully wrapped. So there's no weak points or points to let heat out. And then over the top, got a few fibres there. So there are a quick few things that I'd like to just touch on, as obviously I've seen some other people moaning about wraps and things like that. And it's simply of the case, if well looked after, they will last their 3, 5, maybe 7 to 10 year lifespan. All depends on how much the car's run. If you're doing 5,000 miles a year and it's dry stored when it's not in use, you could see 6, 7, 8 years out of a wrap, no problem at all. If you're using it often, as in 10,000 miles a year, expect 3 years out of it. It's not a product that is, you know, fit and forget. It's a fit and watch it fail. That's just unfortunately the downside. Obviously the upside is you've just reduced your engine bay temperatures by 50%, potentially reduced touch temperatures by 30%, and we've all slipped off an exhaust manifold as it's burnt through our skin. Well, most of us have. There are a few issues with corrosion. Obviously, if you've got water dripping onto them and you've got a mild steel, it's gonna rot. It is as simple as that. If you've got a really cheap stainless steel, we all know the types, you know, unbranded, cheap, come from certain companies that like to brand them as their own. They're all cheap Chinese stainless. It's probably not gonna last. It's probably gonna make it crack because the amount of temperature that's in the stainless changes the way the stainless reacts. So contraction, expansion, obviously it's going to crack at some point. It's stainless anyway. Try using Inconel if you don't want it to crack. I've never had a manifold crack, but then I generally don't fit the cheapest type of manifolds. I always try and wrap ones that are fairly decent. If you've got oils dripping on them, if you've got contaminants hitting them, or if you've got abrasion problems, so the steering column's hitting them, it's dragging across the ground because your car's too low, all of these things are just going to make the thing fall to pieces. End of life, you'll notice that it's just starting to flake off and fall off. And then it needs to be replaced. It's as simple as that. It's a long process to do, but the benefits are quite huge. Everything in motorsport is a trade-off. You win somewhere, you lose somewhere else. There's nothing you can really do about that. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos, subscribe, hit that bell and get the notifications. You can also check us out on Facebook. The link's going to be in the description. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.